Hi, this is Steve Rigolosi, and tonight on Forgotten Mysteries, I have for you The Green-Eyed Monster by Patrick Quentin. This is copyright 1960 by Random House. And let's just take a moment to really appreciate this cover. This is what's known as a type cover, meaning it's only done with typography and there are no images or illustrations. But you can see how effective a type cover can be. It's got that sort of ransom note effect. It's got green in it, to reflect the title of The Green-Eyed Monster, Jealousy, and just very, very eye-catching. And so I need to give credit to the jacket designer, a man by the name of Jerry Kuehl. This shows what a really good type cover can look like. And Random House has a history of doing fabulous covers, so I'm not really surprised. So the first thing to know about this book is the authorship is rather confusing. I had to do some research into this. It turns out that Patrick Quentin and variations on that name, such as Q Patrick, were written by a group of 4 people, either alone or working together. And these are their names. I'm sorry, I wasn't able to memorize them. Richard Wilson Webb, Martha Mott Kelley, Mary Louise Aswell, and Hugh Wheeler. So the back flap tells us that at last it can be known that this book was written truly by Hugh Wheeler. And there is Hugh Wheeler. I believe it. Publishers back in the day weren't always totally upfront with the authorship of their books. But this group of people was very prolific in terms of mystery writing. Did a lot of short stories as well. And probably Hugh Wheeler was the most prolific of them all. The books were very, very well received back in their day, but they have fallen a bit into obscurity. So I was happy when a friend of mine recommended him and this book in particular. This friend sort of knows that I like a very devious plot, which this book has, and so I was happy to find a copy of the book for a reasonable price and to bring it to you. So let's talk a little bit about the plot, and then I'll tell you about my feelings about the book, which are basically positive but mixed for a couple of reasons. So it all starts out rather simply in that our lead character, Andrew Jordan, comes home from work, and he's not an exciting guy. He is the general manager / owner of a carton company. But he's a good guy, and he's married to a woman he adores, Maureen. And he comes home one afternoon to find his wife and his brother, Ned, just sitting on the couch, having a cocktail, their legs rather cozily folded under, and it all looks rather intimate. But, the brother Ned is very much a ne'er-do-well. He's, for lack of a better term, a leech or a hanger-on. He kind of attaches himself to wealthy people and stays with them in their villas in, the south of France or the Caribbean islands, or, he's just one of those really obnoxious characters that gets by on his looks and his charm, and who most people don't see through. I mean, this is what I've never understood, how people cannot see through people like that a mile away. But, Ned is very happy moving from place to place, following the wealthy and sponging off them whenever humanly possible. Finding Ned and his wife hanging out there really kicks into gear Andrew's jealousy, hence the term the green-eyed monster. But there's more to it than that. Andrew isn't so just sort of a crazy, neurotic, jealous freak for no good reason. He's had many hints throughout his, relatively short marriage that his wife is not faithful to him, that she, for lack of a better term, gets around, that she is a social climber, and that she basically married him for a paycheck and a place to live. As my mother would say, she was looking for a soft place to land. That's a great phrase from the 1950s, which my mother still talks like she lives in those days. Adding to his jealousy is the fact that he's very, very physically attracted to his wife, and she kind of keeps him at bay sexually. She really doesn't get sexual with him very often, and it's very frustrating to him, and it makes him feel insecure, and you feel kind of bad for him because he really does love and adore her. But right from the beginning, from her first appearance on the page, there is something sketchy about Maureen. You can tell she is probably up to no good. She's constantly telling half-truths or lying outright, just to the point where you almost can't believe a word that comes out of her mouth. And the same is true for pretty much every other character in this book. The book is really all about lying, bald-faced lying, or shading the truth, or, another interesting aspect of lying, omitting parts of the truth or forgetting parts of the truth, so that what you see at any given moment is really only part of the story. You know that they're like the tip of the iceberg, and there's always more going on underneath. So Andrew comes home, a couple days later, and he finds his wife dead. She's been shot in their apartment, and the apartment has been robbed. Some of her jewelry, although she doesn't really have much, has been robbed, along with some cash. And of course, Andrew, being the spouse, is the primary suspect. And Andrew, being accused, wants to get to the bottom of what's going on. And he goes from person to person, to Maureen's friends, to his brother, to his mother and his stepfather, to one of Maureen's cousins, Rosemary, who plays a large role in the book because she is in love with and engaged to Ned, Andrew's brother. And they're a very odd mixture because Andrew is, such a suave, slick dude, and Rosemary is sort of a bookish, shy, introverted person. It just doesn't feel like a marriage made in heaven. But she is supposedly quite wealthy, and Drew is, not Drew, Ned too is looking for a soft place to land. So what this book is, as I said before, is just one lie after another, or one omission of the truth after another, so that just when you think what's going on, one of the characters says, oh, you know what, I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to hurt your feelings, but this also happened. Or, well, I didn't mention it because I didn't think it was relevant at the time. Or all these other excuses for withholding parts of the truth. I mean, these liars are all lying because they have good reasons to, for self-preservation. But it puts poor Andrew in the place of never quite knowing what's going on until he finally does get to the truth at the very end by virtue of some detection. So there's a lot of interesting things to recommend this book. The first is it felt to me a little bit like Dangerous Liaisons or Les Liaisons Dangereuses by Laclos, where everything is sort of a social, is a social, it's a game that, like, this is a game that they're all playing with each other to make people fall in love with them, or to get their money, or to betray one another. It's got a pretty focused cast, but really not many of them are very likable. But that's okay, because you've got Andrew to like. The second thing that I find super intriguing here is that this is almost like a gender reversed Gothic novel. So we've all read these Gothic novels of sort of naive women in distress, governesses or poor relations, and they are being manipulated or taken advantage of, or the truth is being withheld from them, and they're in danger, and you, the reader, are there hoping that this poor naive heroine does not end up crushed under the wheels of a truck, or pushed off a cliff, or pushed off a boat at sea, or something like that. But in this book, it's the male character, it's the lead, who is in that position of being lied to and manipulated and in danger. And so you don't see a lot of that, right? You don't see a lot of male protagonists who lack kind of the strength, or who have their the wool pulled so easily over their eyes. So it's interesting, if you read a lot from a gender perspective or a feminist perspective, to see how the author pulled that off here. Excuse me. I think he did basically a good job of it. But one of my criticisms of the book is that Andrew does seem occasionally like a patsy. You can't believe, really, that he could be so naive or so trusting that he is just sort of willing to accept everybody at face value when he knows they're lying to him. And so I felt like my bonding with Andrew kind of was a sine wave, where I felt really sorry for him, and then times where I really felt like, oh, come on, Andrew, like, what are you doing here? Have a brain in your head, put two and two together. So that's something to be aware of when you're reading the book. I'd be interested how other people feel about that. Another interesting thing about this book is the portrayal of Andrew and his relationship with his mother. So his mother is an utter narcissist and has been married 4 times and was a terrible mother. Terrible. I mean, to this day, she remains a terrible mother. But there's a certain truth, I think, in their relationship that he's, even though he's a grown married man, he's still sort of looking for her approval, which she'll never give him, because all she really cares about is herself. And she, too, lies to him and withholds the truth. So even the people in your life that you think you could be closest with, your mother and your brother, you find out that they're kind of playing you for a fool. How does that make you feel? Again, kind of like Patsy. So I thought that characterization there was rather modern and contemporary in terms of a narcissistic personality. And it has its heartbreaking moments, as these sort of parent-child relationships do, when you know that the parent really just doesn't really give a rat's ass about their kid. They only care about themselves. The book reads quickly, and it maintains your interest. My main criticism, though, is this is a little tricky. So because the book is all about lying, there is a lot of conversation. Much of this book is dialogue. And I have to say, the dialogue did not ring true to my ears. Everybody speaks in sort of a pretentious or condescending or phony way. Now, I don't know if that was the author's way of trying to point the reader to the idea that these people are lying and they're expressing themselves somewhat oddly, because lying, not telling the truth, requires you to maybe think a little bit more before you speak, or causes you to communicate in a different way than you would if you were being upfront with people. What it actually reminded me of is the reason why I don't tend to watch a lot of older movies. You know how in older movies, the dialogue just doesn't seem quite real? It's very, very stylized, and you think, nobody talks like this. Like the dialogue written in these old movies is so kind of far afield of the way people would talk in the vernacular. And that's one of the reasons why I don't enjoy old movies so much, because the dialogue, it rubs me the wrong way. It doesn't feel like real people. It feels like actors on stage saying words that have been written for them, but there's no reality to it. And so I found myself getting a little weary of the false sounding dialogue. You know, people call everybody darling or honey, oh my dear, and just the words, their phrases. I mean, I know this is 1960, but it's not that long ago, you know? It just, every so often, I would think, God, can't one person in this book talk like a regular human being? And so, like I said, because so much of the book is dialogue, once you become sensitized to this, it's hard to stop seeing it. You know, you can't unsee or unhear the awkwardness of a lot of the dialogue. But I will say, the book is extremely well plotted. The pacing is very good. There are constant surprises and betrayals. Maybe, I mean, of course, a key mystery is, who killed Maureen, who killed Andrew's wife. But there's a larger mystery of, does she love me or does she not? Andrew doesn't know. He can't figure out whether his wife truly loved him or whether she was just using him. And a lot of the book becomes a quest for the answer to that question. And there are ups and downs in it. And you will find out what the answer is. I won't tell you what it is. It reminded me a little bit of a much more recent book that I read by the Norwegian writer Karen Fossum called The Indian Bride, which has kind of a similar mystery where a man gets married to a woman whom he really loves. She dies unexpectedly, and his question too is, did she really love me, or did she just want me to put a roof over her head and and care for her, and I'm the price of that for her. And it's heartbreaking for him too, because he really did love her, and the thought that she might have been using him breaks his heart. So that's what I've got for you tonight. The Green-Eyed Monster by Patrick Quentin. Let me also give props. I have to say, the writing in this book is well above average. It's really good. The writing is really, really good, except for, like I said, the dialogue. There's kind of a weird disconnect between the narrative, which is so well done, and then the dialogue, which got under my skin at times. So there's a lot to recommend this book, but there are also things that may just sound funny to the 21st century ear. You, of course, can decide for yourself if you decide to read The Green-Eyed Monster. I was left with the feeling that I will read more by Patrick Quentin, based on the writing, based on the clever dialogue, based on the pacing. There is a je ne sais quoi here that is memorable, and I don't think I'll easily forget this book. I'll remember it years and years from now, and for me that's a sign of a good book. But hey, it's not perfect. What is? All right, that's what I've got for you tonight. Patrick Quentin, The Green-Eyed Monster, and I will be back next time. Thank you.